Running over and grabbing the gun by the bed is incredibly helpful, especially since this gun is slightly better than the gun that you typically have, and also you don't have your gun going into Konpeki Plaza, so using this gun on the way out is a good tool to have. Now, I do have to say the whole section of hiding inside of the screen and just skipping through all of the cutscene and dialogue stuff is kind of funny to look at. I mean, just so much important, groundbreaking, and earth-shattering plot stuff is going on here, and it's just cruising right through. Matter of fact, Cypher actually moves faster than the dialogue can even keep up before he ends up dropping down, though it is really interesting how quickly he's cleared through this place. Running out of the building, though, can be a little tense, just kind of fighting your way past everything. You have to hope that Jackie is hurrying up because he can be a huge time loss, since a lot of the time you just have to sit around and wait for him. During the Delamain escape, we see Cypher shooting down the drones ASAP, or one of them will end up flying behind the building, causing a pretty big time loss for the driving section, because once those drones are out of the way, you can progress on faster. And then from there, right after meeting up with your BFF Dex, we go into the Johnny Silverhand flashback. At the beginning, helicopters circle around multiple times, but if you're quick enough, you can pull off a Johnny 1 cycle, which is where you clear all the required enemies fast enough for the helicopter to not have to cycle around again. Which then means Johnny can actually get out of the helicopter faster, which is super hype if a runner can manage to pull this off. From there, cruising through the flashback section in Arasaka Tower is pretty fast paced, and having level familiarity with where the enemies are going to be and pop off the shots where you have to, as Johnny is really good for cruising on through this section. Now, starting things off on Act 2, there's definitely a lot of things that kind of pick up plot-wise at the very beginning, and there's a lot of meeting up and talking sections you kind of have to go through first. Fortunately, Cold Cypher just flings his way through all of those sections pretty quickly, leading up to the section where V gets to the clouds. Now, interestingly enough, there's a lot of different ways typically to play through this level, but it seems like the main strategy is just to fly right through it and get that katana and go straight to that weird creepy dude. Seriously though, getting that katana is so cool. It's just such a good katana. From there, you go to the section where typically you have to go and interrogate fingers. Honestly, the best way to do this is just rip the door right open. Don't worry about cutting in line, and go interrogate fingers at your own pace. You can quickly buy a brain dance and just loot it off of him. From there, you have to do some required brain dance stuff, and honestly, the fastest way to get through these is just having precise scanning to speed the brain dances along and knowing exactly ahead of time what you need to scan and at what point. Cypher uses a lot of the tricks that he's been using so far, like doing katana lunges and whatnot, to rush his way through the next section, saving Evelyn, dropping her off with Judy, and then just going over to talk to Rogue, because she's kind of the next important thing to move the story along. Rogue then introduces you to Panam, and long story short, you have to go with Panam to help get her truck back. Now, typically, there's a bunch of enemies around, you have to sneak around, get the keys, snag the car, and drive off, but instead, we just see this really deadly launch directly to the truck, taking out the person with the keys, and then just grabbing the truck and driving off. There are quite a few sections where you have to just sit around and ride around with Panam, and she wants you to go and help her get some revenge somewhere, but if you just say no, you can skip that whole thing. Matter of fact, just in general, there's a lot of riding around with Panam that just takes a long time. However, later on, after you EMP the transport with Panam, you have to get rid of some of the drones, which finally moves Panam's part of the storyline along a bit. We then see Cold Cypher do a really cool trick here called a Mitch skip, where typically you would get out of the car, you'd run over there, disable the turret, and do this big encounter to rescue Mitch. But by timing out some slides and bypassing the guards, you can actually skip this whole section and go straight to the building where they're keeping Hellman. This trick is really cool, and it saves a little over a minute of time. Now, essentially, Cold Cypher does something really awesome when he's approaching the part where he goes to get Hellman. Essentially, he combines K-hops with some really sneaky skills to get right up to Hellman without being noticed along the way. Now, there is obviously some level of RNG involved here, but just the fact that this sequence of tricks is used and then it's pulled off is so incredibly awesome. And as we start to close into the last required arc of the game, there are just a few tricks that come up here in the end section that will completely make or break a speedrun. And some of these tricks are so incredibly awesome to see how they're pulled off and how they actually end up playing a major role to the overall time that a Cyberpunk run can get into. And one of these is a really interesting part when you're with the Voodoo Boys. After you set up some stuff for the big heist with Takamura, you have to head over to Pacifica and do some stuff with the Voodoo Boys. But what's really interesting here is typically you have to go into the big abandoned mall turned gym. And this is where a really impressive trick called the gym skip is required to get an optimum time here. We see Cold Cypher set up a quick fast travel store, and once you enter the building, there's typically a ton of enemies, and the goal here is to sneak past all of them completely undetected to skip the boss fight with the Sasquatch at the end section before you get into the movie theater where you find the agent. But if you take on a very specific angle, you can get a perfect K-hop slide so the guards in the gym don't detect you. Now this part is tricky and sometimes it requires a few resets, but it's worth the time save just because you don't want to have to deal with fighting against Sasquatch. If you mess up, it's easier just to reload and save. If this trick can be pulled off though, going straight up the theater and just taking out the agent right away is the fastest way to deal with it. We then see Cold Cypher push through the next sections with the Voodoo Boys, going into the flashback section with Johnny Silverhand once again, and for the most part the strategy here is just to know where all the enemies are and quickly clear them out. In the first area you have to be extra careful not to go too fast or else the game can softlock, which actually happened to me in my original playthrough of Cyberpunk 2077. But yeah, for the most part, for the second flashback section with Johnny Silverhand, just knowing where the enemies are is the fastest way to cruise past it. But after everything that's gone through the entire speedrun for Cyberpunk 2077, it all culminates up to the final trick that is extremely nerve-wracking because it's easy to mess up and plays a pretty big role in the outcome of the final speedrun time. Not only does the parade have a lot of different elements that can get in the way and cause issues in the speedrun, but it also has a boss fight at the very end. So typically on the parade level, you just have to make your way through the crowd and take out the various snipers, making your way over to their netrunner and then clear the level. It's a pretty lengthy level typically, however, the way that this is approached in a speedrunning format is very unique. Right off the bat, the crowd RNG plays a major role as V has to be able to navigate through the crowd as quickly and efficiently, and it can be different each run. Fortunately enough, Cold Cypher got a really good roll with the crowd here starting things off. No random people just blocking V's way there. Moving up to take out the first snipers, going for headshots is the main strategy to quickly take them out without too much of an issue. Then Cold Cypher quickly turns around and K-hop jumps across the building over to the building on the other side of the street to save time having to traverse and finding the bridge location, quickly picks off the next sniper. But then the epic moment that will completely decide the outcome of this trick and the overall run in this case, which is where V typically has to travel to the upper levels of where the parade is going on, and instead of going through the next sections, fighting against several enemies and finding elevators along the way, we see Cold Cypher pull off one of the most impressive fist flights that we've seen in the entire run. And honestly, this last section is just an epic culmination of a lot of the tricks that were required to master along the way, all coming together to decide the outcome of this individual level. Once he pulls the fist flight up onto the balcony, he does a quick K-hop across from that balcony over a massive gap to land over on this bridge. And honestly, the hype that Cold Cypher had when he pulled it off on his first attempt during the run that ended up being the world record was so awesome to see.
No, he's... Oh no. He's locked on. He's locked on. I don't know if we'll survive this. Yes! Oh my god, yes! Okay. We're past all the scary stuff.
He quickly takes out the enemies in the area, pushes into the elevator, and starts upgrading some stuff to make his sword and blade usage more effective during the boss fight with Oda. He then goes into the boss fight with Oda with his legendary katana and traps Oda in a corner where he won't typically run off and start making it this weird chase with the boss that can take more time. And with the end of the run in sight, it's just a matter of having a few things come together to finalize and lock in that world record time. Cold Cypher has to exit the level as per normal. He does get a fast travel set up and saved at Arasaka Tower, which plays a massive role in just a few moments, and then heads over to where Takamura is, and he makes sure to knock on the door 4 times. After this section, he has to make a quick escape through the building, just running past all of the enemies, and then all of a sudden he wakes up with Johnny in a motel outside of the city. After quickly talking to the doll and the doll leaves, we see Cold Cypher activate that fast travel point to Arasaka Tower, which completely skips over the tapeworm level where you typically talk to Johnny inside of the motel room in Pacifica, and he heads straight into Embers, starting the end game point of no return. Now typically at this point in the game, you have various options as to which ending you want to take based off of what relationships and side quests you did along the way. However, since there weren't any side quests or anything like that, the options are pretty limited, though one ending option is obviously much faster than all of the other endings in Cyberpunk 2077, which of course is the one that ends up being chosen here because it abruptly ends the game. And while it might be one of the more anticlimactic endings to Cyberpunk 2077, it sure is the fastest, and picking the option just to end it all does end the speedrun, and this is how we ended up seeing Cold Cypher pull off an impressive speedrun time with 2 hours, 52 minutes, and 1 second. Seriously, seeing a run like this done where an entire game that is intended to take over 60 hours or more to play through is condensed to just a couple of hours is so incredibly impressive. And if you want to watch Cold Cypher's run, it actually is really interesting to see. He did commentary throughout his run, and you can also watch him when he live streams it. So make sure you check out his channel in the description down below, especially because he helped us really take on figuring out the specifics of this run. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on for more speedrunning content just like this, or you can join the conversation on our Discord, link in the description.